Hello, welcome to the morning news. Our top story this morning takes us to the United States. The U.S. government announced it would change the Cuba's status from its human trafficking report. The report, published every year by the Department of State, modified the island nation's status from the lowest rank for the first time since 2003 and recognized the efforts made by the Cuban government in tackling sex trafficking. Cuba and the U.S. have resumed diplomatic relations and opened embassies in each other's countries last week.
Cuba was upgraded to the Tier 2 watch list because of the progress that the government's made in addressing and prosecuting sex trafficking, as well as the commitments that the Cuban government has made to become compliant with the minimum standards.
For more Latin American news, we got to Chile. President Michelle Bachelet urged citizens to provide information on crimes committed during the military dictatorship. Bachelet's remarks come after 4 soldiers were detained to be investigated in connection with the murder of photographer Rodrigo Rojas in 1986 during Chile's military dictatorship, which lasted from 1973 to 1989, and thousands of people disappeared and dead. President Bachelet highlighted the many crimes committed during that period which are still unresolved.
Today, I want to reiterate the call for those who have information, because there can be no more silence. There are people who know the truth about many cases which still have not been resolved.
Dissident teachers in the southern Mexico state of Oaxaca protested against what they fear is a government attack against their organization, labor rights, and public education. Authorities dissolved the state's Public Education Institute and froze their union bank accounts. Our correspondent Clayton Khan has more.
In a peaceful mega march under the hot Oaxacan sun in shadows of some 20,000 elements of the Army and Federal Police, dissident teachers of the National Coordinator of Education Workers, or CNTE, protest what they say is an attack on their organization and social protest, underscoring the state's omission in education.
If you saw the 106 municipalities, thanks to the organization and students' families, we have what exists in the schools. The government in reality does nothing to support us.
It was last Monday when state and federal authorities dissolved the CNTE-controlled Oaxaca State Public Education Institute, which helped to guarantee the labor rights of teachers. Authorities affirm that it is a means to reinforce the so-called education reform.
The education reform emancipates and respects the individual and collective rights of the teachers with the law in hand.
Yet the dissident teachers who have vehemently opposed the neoliberal reform since 2012 argued that it is more about eroding labor rights than free and accessible public education.
The only objective is to eliminate the base jobs of the teachers, eliminate all the rights that we, the CNTE, acquired. And it is to have people working by contract of 3 to 6 months, but there's not education aspect to it.
The teachers argue that the reform was imposed, along with teacher evaluations that they say are used to eradicate the dissident teachers rather than give them greater capacities. Ultimately, they say they are open to negotiating with the authorities to implement a plural education model.
We have a proposal that has been designed collectively with intellectuals, parents, students, teachers, basically the principal actors of education, making a proposal that in reality would elevate the quality of education of our children.
However, the authorities continue to deny negotiations, prompting the 100,000-strong CNTE to threaten a labor strike at the beginning of the 2015-2016 school year. Clayton Khan, Telesur, Mexico City.
The March of Torches movement in Honduras showed support for journalist David Romero, who was the first to show proof of the corruption during the former and current government. He has been accused of defamation and other charges, thus could face prison. For more, we go to our correspondent Gerardo Torres.
Rain didn't stop the March of Torches in Tegucigalpa, where thousands of Hondurans for the 10th week in a row went onto the streets to demand an end to corruption. The protesters showed their support for journalist David Romero, who has requested asylum in the Human Rights Commission after he was rescued by protesters when the court attempted to send him to prison for defamation.
These are processes. People exploded. What happened yesterday in the court was a result of the indignation that people feel. They don't accept any more impunity in this country, any more corruption, more attacks against the people and against social communicators who are dedicated to doing work of informing everyone.
Romero presented checks that proved the participation of the ruling National Party in the embezzlement of the country's Social Security Institute for more than $350 million. At least $90 million were used in the 2013 campaign of current President Juan Hernandez. Romero's investigation ignited the tourist demonstrations throughout Honduras.
Every day, people are becoming more and more outraged. They are realizing that what happened here can't remain unpunished, and that is why people are going out into the streets every Friday. You can see the strength growing. More and more people are protesting, and there are more and more reasons to protest. The country is collapsing, and it will get to a point where every sector is heard and every social movement is involved.
David Romero is asking for protection from the Human Rights Commissioner and is hoping to have a fair trial. He has 42 charges against him for defamation and fears that if sent to prison, his life could be in danger. After 5 days in the Human Rights Commissioner, he has left the building with the promise of security until the trial is reopened. Gerardo Torres, Telesur, Central America.
And now let's take a look at our World News Roundup.
Puerto Rico announced Monday it will not be able to meet a new debt payment deadline. The U.S. Commonwealth, which holds a $72 billion debt with creditors, was set to make a $93.7 million payment by August 1st. The island's authorities are seeking to reach a deal with creditors, which would allow Puerto Rico to make smaller payments in a wider time frame. The activist group Black Lives Matter is now in Canada. They organized rallies in Toronto to express their outrage over 2 recent shootings of black men at the hands of police officers. The demonstrators marched near the site of the most recent incident in which 45-year-old Andre Loku from Sudan was shot dead July 5th. His death is still under investigation. Demonstrators also rallied over the 2014 case of Jermaine Carby, who was shot to death during a traffic stop in nearby Brampton. The officer involved in the shooting was cleared by Ontario's Special Investigations Unit.
If we don't see action, we're going to continue to take action, so we're going to keep up the pressure.
U.S. President Barack Obama will meet with the African Union at its headquarters in Ethiopia as part of his trip to Africa. Obama will become the first U.S. president to address the regional integration body. The president will focus on discussing on the current conflict in South Sudan, which has killed thousands and has raised concerns on neighboring countries. President Obama also discussed this and other issues with his Ethiopian counterpart, Haile Mariam Desalegn.
We have discussed a range of issues related to cooperation on security and peace building in the region and on the pivotal role the U.S. can and does play. We have agreed to work closely on South Sudan to bring lasting peace to the conflict-ridden country.
A court in Libya sentenced one of the sons of late Muammar Gaddafi to death. Saif al-Islam Gaddafi was charged in absentia with kidnap, murder, and embezzlement during the 2011 uprising that ousted his father. Saif al-Islam will now have the chance to appeal the ruling. However, this would be unlikely since he is being held by a rebel group in the town of Zintan, which refuses to hand him over to authorities.
History has been made in NFL. The Arizona Cardinals have hired the first woman to ever coach in the National Football League. Jen Walter will be training linebackers during the preseason training. This is the second time Walter makes history. She was the first woman to play in the Men's Pro Football League in a non-kicking position. She was a linebacker for the Texas Revolution of Indoor Football League. She told reporters she wanted little girls to grow up and knowing they could do anything. More of these on our website, telesurtv.net/English. Thanks for watching and have a good day.